Can we get started?
Sure.
Great. What do you think about the current tax system, and what amendments might you make to it if elected president?
Well, if we're up to me, we'd start over and throw out this tax system. I mean, it's been so changed, amended, that it's so confusing. It's the full Employment Act for accountants. They might not be too happy, but we need to dramatically simplify our tax system. Corporate taxes are too high. We can't compete. Those need to be adjusted, and we need to really look at everything and just start from scratch. I'm trying to meet with Steve Forbes. I want to hear more about the flat tax. I've met with people on the fair tax. I just think we need to really reform our tax system.
How do you feel about the income tax system, personal income tax?
Well, I support personal income tax, and I think it's necessary. It's been in effect for a long time. You know, we survive without it, but I think for the ability to defend our nation and to help those who can't take care of themselves, there is a role for government, so I do support federal income tax.
In regards to the current budget crisis, do you feel that the federal government should adopt a balanced budget amendment?
I do. I do support a federal balanced budget amendment. I think we have to take some dramatic steps to alter the way Washington has been spending money. You know, they're spineless. It's just history repeating itself. They're cutting taxes and increasing spending, and that cannot continue.
What specific spending cuts would you recommend as a solution?
Well, everything should be on the table, and I would even propose a drastic, across-the-board spending cut. We need to fix this situation, and I am not beholden to special interests as a first-time candidate, and I can make these kinds of statements, but certainly the entitlement, those should be on the table, too. People are living far longer than they were when Social Security was introduced in 1935. People are living into their 90s and 100s. Those days in the 30s, 66 was a long life. So, we need to adjust things. We need to graduate it so it's not, interfering with people who are on entitlement programs now, but they need to be adjusted.
How do you feel about illegal immigration, and do you think it's a state's issue or a national issue?
Well, it's more of a federal issue, and I'm advocating ending the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. We should bring those troops home, and I would put many of them on the border. I think we need to really focus on securing our borders, particularly the southern half of the country, and I think we need to take advantage of the technology, the drone technology, and everything else to control the borders. But on the other end, I live in Southern California. Their immigration is a huge problem there. But we have 12 or 13 million illegal immigrants in this country, and we need to work some solution out to accommodate those.
So you think there should be some type of pathway to legalizing those immigrants?
I agree with George W. Bush, yes. I think we need a pathway to citizenship for these. Not instantaneous. We don't want to encourage people to break the law and come here illegally, but I think we have a situation we need to deal with. And it's George W. Bush tried. I commended him for that then, and we need that type of solution.
How do you feel about Guantanamo Bay? Do you think it should stay open, or do you think the practices there should change?
I mean, it's still always unbelievable to me that our arch enemy, Cuba, we have a military installation on the island. And I mean, people don't even think about that. But yes, I think it's for the terrorist situation and to bring people into a place where they're protected and Americans are protected, and we can hold military trials for terrorists who are out to destroy this country. I think it's absolutely imperative that that facility be maintained.
So you think they should be charged as combatants, not in civilian courts?
I do. I think if the government, and I have great faith in our military courts, there are still trials in this country. We need to utilize those. We should not bring these combatants into our cities like President Obama initially proposed and has backed away from now to some extent. And Eric Holder, I think that's a huge mistake. To hold a trial in New York City is just, it's not taking into account what happened there, to all the victims. It's a terrible idea.
We'll change gears a little bit. How do you think the U.S. should proceed in regards to health care? And would you like to see changes made in regards to the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act?
Well, I think the Obamacare was a mistake. I was against it last summer. I always have been, but I was out, very much against it, talking about a state solution. And I think what Governor Romney did in Massachusetts it was the decision of the legislature, State House, and the governor. I think that's what we need to do. And it needs to be augmented, though, with federal help, because we cannot rely on all 50 states to do that. Two that have varying degrees of medical health care now, and I think that's important. And there are Americans that need healthcare. The system is not working. It's like our tax system, where people know how to take advantage of a situation and they'll go to emergency care. And of course, that is not an efficient way to treat someone with a headache or a cold. And so we need to change our healthcare, but we cannot afford at this juncture to insure every American and to provide optimal health care for every single American. I wish we could, and other countries do, but they're smaller and don't have the situation we do, particularly with our unemployment and our economy right now. It's not affordable.
Do you think that the No Child Left Behind Act should be amended or repealed, and how can the U.S. continue to improve its schools to maintain global competition?
Well, my number one issue has been education reform. It's obviously in serious trouble in our country. We've dropped from the country that invented public education to the best in the world to 23rd in math, 25th in science, and it's a disgrace. And also, we're bringing in all these foreign nationals to our great colleges and universities, and then we send them home. If we're going to have any kind of immigration reform, that should be a part of it. Let's keep these bright people that we've educated here, because these engineering jobs are going begging. Having to bring people in. So we need to dramatically change education. I proposed. One of my proposals was considering lowering the voting age, 28th Amendment, and that's part of my education platform, and it does fit, because if we were to lower the voting age to 16 or 17, we teach politics and campaigning in the high schools real time. So it's not just history, it's making school more interesting and fun. People like me and maybe you that were really interested in politics, to have politicians like me going into the high schools and campaigning, or city council candidates or mayor or state legislative candidates, it would make it good, and it get kids to engage in the process. And I want to come up with proposals like that. I was not a great student. I didn't like school, but I had no choice. I had to stay in school. I had to go to college. I was very fortunate. My parents gave me no options, but unfortunately there are many, many options out there. So we need to change that. I've even suggested making school more fun, and I've met with experts who just, one guy got up from the table and left when I suggested it. I said, school's not supposed to be fun. Well, it's not a camp situation, it's not a playground, but we need to keep these kids in school, because they're dropping out in record amounts, 1 million a year. And so it needs a lot of help, and the teachers' unions are a huge problem. American Teachers Association, National Education Association, and they're just protecting the bad teachers, and I'm willing and able and ready to take them on.
Great. You touched upon the university systems. Do you think the government should have any role in keeping down rising costs for colleges and universities?
Oh boy. Well,
you're speaking to two people really.
There are students that are with their costs going up, and in California, which had always very affordable higher education, it's not anymore. It's now competing with the private schools, and it's sad. I like to think that there's a lot of waste, and knowing a lot of people in the system and having talked to people, we can cut a lot of costs, but I don't think the rising costs need to be passed on to students. Also there's a lot of private money out there that can help augment these costs, foundation money, corporate money, things that we can work at to bring that in, so it's not all placed on the students.
Where do your concerns on the environment stand, and do you think cap and trade programs for CO2 emissions are the right answer?
I'm still looking at that issue. That's one I've not taken a strong position on, because while I consider myself a green candidate, and I think, with our economic situation, we don't want to put any undue burdens on business, and this might, but and California's been very successful in that regard too, and on the environment, there's so many things we can do, and on energy particularly, to save the environment. We're going to have 30% of all our electricity by wind and sun.
Yeah, he was.
By 2020. And so, not that long away, we're making a lot of headway, and there are a lot of things to do. But I want to start right away, as opposed to 9 years from now. I want to start with conservation. I'm tired of going to movie theaters and airports and public buildings that are 64 degrees in the summer and 92 degrees in the winter. People are putting sweaters on in theaters when it's 90 degrees outside, and not mandated, but we just need to use common sense. We need to teach people how to recycle. People get the bins quite often, but they don't know what gets in there. We just need to utilize what we have already and educate and not make it mandatory, though, but to use voluntary help to solve these problems. And the American public will be very willing. We need someone to lead and tell them that. And Obama has not done that.
Do you think there should be tax incentives for green energy and green investment and research?
Absolutely, yeah. That is, in transitioning people, particularly Americans who are set in their ways, and, we've had oil forever, but if we're going to change people's way of doing business and make it so it's a voluntary effort, it's not mandatory, yes, I'm all for tax incentives. Those work very well.
Are you satisfied with the current legislation on abortion in the United States, or would you like to see access to these services diminished or increased in any way?
I am, yes, I supported Roe v. Wade. I think the law of the land. I was in a country that didn't have that when I was your age, and I knew of horror stories going on out there. Support that, but I think it's very much needed, and I've always been a pro-choice advocate.
Do you think it should be a state's issue or a federal issue?
I think it needs to be a federal issue because it's basically it's putting no restrictions. I'm a Republican, and Republicans believe in less government and keeping government out of our lives, and to me, that is exactly what the choice issue is, and I think that is what the Supreme Court did and left it to the individuals, not to the states. Civil rights should not be left to the states. We've seen that. There's surveys now in Mississippi where there's still a majority of the voters there, don't believe in interracial marriage. And I mean, it's just, some of the states in this country are a little backwards, and so they're particularly on civil rights and I think individual liberty, that's where the courts come in, and that's why our founders did the court system. It's to keep
I'll be there in a minute, all right?
politicians in check.
What's your position on the war on drugs? And do you think, what do you think about marijuana legislation? Is it a state's issue or a federal issue again?
Well, I think we should legalize marijuana, and it's happened in 16 states for medical marijuana use. And I think we should legalize it federally. I think it's safer and less harmful than alcohol, and I think it should be taxed. I think it's an inordinate number of people in prisons. The costs of trials and incarceration and the disruption is terrible. And, in countries like the Netherlands, where it's legal, what I'm told is, the residents aren't using marijuana. It's the tourists that come in to do it. It's the fact that it's illegal makes it more of a novelty, more daring. That's a problem. I think it should be legalized. No other drugs, but I think that marijuana absolutely should be made legal by the federal government and taxed.
I think that's about everything.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.